Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of Category 3, The Untold Story of Hong Kong Exploitation Cinema, a documentary from 2018 that is technically a British production, but its focus is solely on the Category 3 films from Hong Kong cinema, so it's entirely relevant to this channel. Now, Cat 3, as I've mentioned in my reviews of these films, is essentially a rating designation by the Hong Kong Motion Picture Rating System for films that are only suitable for people 18 years or older, usually because the film has graphic violence or sexual content, but there are other reasons as well. However, when movie fans talk about Category 3 films, you might gather the impression that it was an actual subgenre of the Hong Kong film industry that existed in the late 80s to mid-90s and occasionally going forward. And in many cases, Western viewers, especially Americans who are fans of this stuff, do use the term as a subgenre designation. Now, this documentary that we're talking about here is basically a look at the history of Hong Kong's exploitation cinema from the early days of the Shaw Brothers Shockers through the advent of the Category 3 rating in 1988, and then the post-boom output through the present day. And the runtime of this documentary is 83 minutes, which is pretty hefty, so it covers quite a bit of content. Now, there's discussion on why the Category 3 rating was introduced, how people in Hong Kong reacted to the movies, how the movies reflect social problems or provide a therapeutic relief for moviegoers, how producers could make films more violent and still pass censorship guidelines, how the handover to China in 1997 impacted these kinds of films. They also talk about certain kinds of violence that will pass mainland censorship nowadays, while other types of violence will not pass, and why these films will likely never be made again. So, they cover a lot of stuff. I'm not like the biggest fan of documentaries, as you could probably tell since I almost never review them. If only because they tend to be a little bit more dry and academic when compared to narrative storytelling. However, this documentary is very engaging and surprisingly fun. If only because Category 3 movies are, by their very nature, absurd and somewhat confrontational, there are some extremely outlandish films that are showcased here. I really enjoy the interviews with Anthony Wong and Josie Ho in particular. Some very frank, honest opinions are given, especially by Anthony Wong. The guy's great. He just says it like it is. Even the YouTuber, The Silver Spleen, gets some observations in. And The Silver Spleen has not been that active over the past year or so on YouTube. So if you want more of him, this documentary will give you that as well. Now, they touch upon a number of films, including but not limited to The Killer Snakes, Men Behind the Sun, Laboratory of the Devil, also known as Men Behind the Sun 2, Sex and Zen, Erotic Ghost Story 1 and 2, Viva Erotica, Untold Story 1 and 2, Taxi Hunter, Ebola Syndrome, Dr. Lamb, Run and Kill, All of a Sudden, Naked Killer, Red to Kill, Happy Together, Naked Weapon, Election, Exiled, Dog Bite Dog, Dream Home, Drug War, Naked Ambition 3D, and The Sleep Curse, to name a few. Now, some observations that I found interesting, I won't spoil a lot, but just a few notes, is that some of these filmmakers would intentionally want a Category 3 rating for the purpose of earning a profit. And when I was thinking about it, this is the exact opposite of American filmmakers from the 1980s who went out of their way to avoid an X rating dished out by the MPAA. And there's plenty of stories about that. The MPAA, we could go on for hours about how stupid they are. But, they would dangle the X rating in front of you and be like, you better cut some of these death scenes out or we're going to give you an X rating. Filmmakers would be like, okay, we'll do whatever you want, right? But in Hong Kong, it was like, oh, let's just add more violence, which I found really quite entertaining when you think about it. Many people in Hong Kong at the time, or at least some of them, considered these films to be a legitimate form of entertainment, not to be ashamed of watching. And Anthony Wong also never even wanted to do the Untold story, but he did it out of obligation because of his contracts. So there's a few little tidbits for you. And like I said, this documentary is very informative. One criticism I might make of it, though, is that they only mention Ricky-O, the story of Ricky, in passing. And they show a few brief clips of it, but they do not discuss it much at all, which I thought was pretty glaring omission, in my opinion. Also, the tone is a little bit melancholy near the end of the documentary, because you realize that this kind of film, mostly a thing of the past, unfortunately. But it will make you want to watch or rewatch a bunch of them. So I definitely recommend Category 3, The Untold Story of Hong Kong Exploitation Cinema, which is currently available on this Blu-ray. And this is the, what is this? Unearthed Classics, the Untold Story Blu-ray release from Unearthed Classics. And this has the movie in it, and then the special feature, or they have a couple special features, but one of them is this documentary. So, I recommend you buy this, because then you could watch Untold Story first, because they do spoil a few things in the documentary on it. And then you can watch the documentary, and it'll give you about 3 hours or so of a pretty solid entertainment. It's a good evening. A good evening for sure. And I did review the Untold Story on my channel in a separate review back in the day, so check that out. So yes, I recommend this, and as always, we will see you next time.